Instructor, basic and advanced life support, fellowship in the American College of the Chest Physician, functional critical care, fundamental critical care support course certificate, guest faculty in zone and national conferences ISA, ISSP, BSACP, AORA, IAPCON, acute and chronic pain workshops, area of interest, perioperative pain, ultrasound guided nerve blocks, and research methodology. Honors and awards and publications. I can't see the full slide. Can anybody make it a little bit upwards? ISA IGA Best Review Award 2016.
And assistant. Should I?
Assistant editor IJA. Can you read Tanvi for me?
Yes, sir. So assistant editor IJA, author and co-author in several best paper awards, more than 90 publications in international and national reputed journals. Ma'am VANITA, please.
I request madam to please continue her talk. She has a lot of clinical parts and a lot of academic things.
Thank you, Chairperson, Dr. Deshpande, Dr. Mayank, Sir, Dr. Kaul, and all the distinguished seniors and my dear friends. So today I'll be talking on the preparation of research proposal for submission and ethical aspects. I have such a senior faculty in front of me that they all know this topic so well, but then still we will be just going through these topics very briefly. I would say that.
Some problem with that.
You are muted, ma'am.
Okay. Now am I audible to you? I don't know how it got.
Yes. Yes.
Now am I audible? Do I start again or is it fine from now?
It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. I think so. Yeah. So I said I'll just go briefly through this presentation because I have very senior faculty with me in this August gathering. To start with the prerequisites, we should have the researcher who is initiating the trial should be having a required qualification, should be trained enough, and should assume the responsibility because this will need the proper conduct and the going through various regulatory bodies which are there, which we have to, go through. So besides being a good, well-qualified researcher, there should be, the facilities should also be available in their centers or where they are planning to do the research. So what should be the components of a good research? The components of a good research should be practical. The question should be practical, should have broader areas, and the aim should be very clear, what the researchers actually want to do. So if you are a young researcher, then you can choose a mentor. And if you are qualified and you have done research, then you can go ahead with and have co-investigators with you who can be help you in your research and your different aspects of data collection and giving critical remarks and going through the manuscript in the end. So the beginning being the most difficult, this table I've just made for the students actually for them to have a table of content, which we can see the various components of a protocol that they submit in their colleges. So this is just a brief outline of that. Then the students have to make a front page which talks about the application and how they have to put their personal data before they submit the protocol to their research committee or after that to the ethics committee. Certificate, this is for the students. Then this is for the faculty initiated protocol trials in which one of them takes the responsibility of being the principal investigators and other co-investigators can be from the same department. And also if it's involving multiple departments, they can pick the co-investigators for them. Then this is an undertaking which investigators should submit that what they're trying to do is an original work. The proposal which they're submitting should be plagiarism checked. It should be less than 10%. It is better if we don't have any plagiarism, and better if it's less. Least required is at least 10%, and that has to be without the references. So the title of the study, actually we put the title of the study first, but then it should be, written after the whole the synopsis has been written, so that your title reflects your study in totality. Introduction should be brief for a synopsis, like it should describe the problem. You should say, what is the problem? I've seen synopses in which people have written pages and pages, but they don't come to what is the problem. They start talking about history. So you should first address what is the problem, what is already known about the topic, and what has not been answered till now. So basically, what novelty you're trying to do in this study which you have planned. Plus, after this, at the end of it, the introduction, there should be a hypothesis should be generated. So we all know that the null hypothesis is actually says that there is no difference between the 2 or the 3 parameters which you are trying to say so this is basically the null hypothesis, there's no difference. But the alternate hypothesis says whether this treatment would be expected to be better or similar, that we have to generate the hypothesis depending upon the research we are trying to do. So research designs are chosen to answer the research questions. So whether you want to do a cross-sectional study, or you want to do a randomized study, or you want to do a cohort study. So what research question you have, based on that, you will plan the design. The statistics will answer the research questions, like what statistical you'll be planning for that. And variables are chosen to collect and then to answer these research questions. So as I said, the most important is your population, then what intervention, what comparator and outcome. Basically, this is mostly for the your RCTs. Just to give a very simple example, the research question is, what are the health benefits of eating an apple a day? You all know apple a day is good, but that is just a question. So how can you generate this into a hypothesis? So increasing apple consumption, you can use different age, whichever you want to study, in over 60 years here, will result in decreasing frequency of doctor's visit. So what will be the null hypothesis? Increasing apple consumption in over 60 years of age will have no effect on the frequency of the doctor's visit. After this is generating the hypothesis, but then before that, all this hard work comes from the review of literature. You have to study the review of literature in detail so that you can find out the primary focus, then how you can compare what is the standard care. Because anything, if you're planning, most of the time in anesthesia, we're doing randomized controlled trials. So in that, we need to have a control or a comparator, which is already the gold standard. We cannot compare something with which is already not confirmed as the gold standard. So we always compare a new intervention with the standard treatment, which is there. Then you have to find what is the critical, you have to critically analyze the literature, and then you have to see how it can help you in your research, which you are planning. So we can go there are multiple research engines. Just to show you here that we can go to the PubMed, we can put our keywords here, and then like we put here low back pain, then you will see go through the different, you can put different mesh words so that you get a good amount of articles from the research engines. Now, while doing research, and once you are, going through studies, and you have to find, you come across like this, I want to study, and after that, you need to look the factors which can affect your outcome. So if you're trying to study a patient on lung cancer, so you have to see what are the other things, what are the risk factors that the patient might be having. So they can be smoker, they can be any other like tobacco chewing or whatever, then they can be certain risk factors. Now, how are their risk factors going to affect the exposure? So sometimes they are unavoidable. Sometimes you can avoid them. You can, in your inclusion and your exclusion criteria, you can filter these confounders. The other way of, preventing them is that you are planning a randomized study. So even if you have by mistake taken a confounder, the randomization will take care of it because it will distribute it with the help of a randomization. So you will not know which patient will be going to which group. So you will not be able to influence the group allocation of those patients. Then restriction is like making strict criteria of your inclusion and exclusion criteria so that the confounders automatically get filtered out. The next thing is matching, like in a case control study, you can match the case with the control, trying to match the demographics variables and a few confounding factors. And last is stratification, that is done in the analysis time that you can do it. So if you put these mesh words with the use of Boolean words, O and or, and then you can get whichever you'll put, there will be multiple, research results there. Then how can you, reduce the error further? So there are certain type of, systematic errors. So you need to, once you're planning the protocol, so you have to make sure that there's selection bias, like you do a convenient sampling. So you want to do sampling only during the day. You don't want to do cases which come at night. So there can be a selection bias. Then you have a confounder, then it can lead to confounding bias. And sometimes, you're doing a study in which you're taking the interview of the patient and asking them something which has already happened in the past. So they might recall it, and something they will remember, something will not remember. So that can maybe lead to information bias. Or if you have a questionnaire and you tell your junior resident to take that questionnaire and he asks in his own way, so that can also lead to information bias. So once you are gone through the review of literature, you have written it properly, you have made good tabulations, now comes the time of the aim and objectives. So the aim should have a broad indication. So what you want to achieve in the research, it should mention it. And so this hypothesis can be reframed into it. So we want to study this, we want to estimate this, or we want to determine this, whatever you are planning the question. That is your main outcome which you are trying to find out. And basically it is basically on this parameter that you're trying to calculate the sample size also. Then objectives are the tools. Like if I say my aim is to go to Delhi, but what will be my objectives? My objectives will be how will I go, whether I go by car or train, or that, just to simplify the question for the students. Secondly, that you should also make sure that once you've planned an aim, your aim should be so that whatever, you must keep these points in mind, like your study, which should be feasible, it should be interesting, something novelty should be there in your study, and it should be ethical and relevant. This is a general principle for the entire study. Then depending upon your research question, you can think about the design, the setting is where you want to do it, how long you want to do it, what is the sample size, and what sampling technique you want to use. The population will be defined as based on your study. There are several websites which show how to calculate sample size. They are freely, most of them are freely available. I have a list of sites, few of them are paid, but then a few of them are really, they're free and they're very good. Like you could use these OpenEpi and Power and Statistical Style. Like this ClinCal is absolutely free. So whenever once you've done with the sample size calculation, you've determined what statistical test you have to take, and that you can take the help. Once you made a list of your data, you can consult a statistician, and they will guide you what statistical test, whether it's a normally distributed data. We had a very good session last time for data, so I will not go into that detail. So after the data collection, then you have to make how will you collect the data, who will collect, who will go and enroll the patients, who will do the intervention. So all that has to be defined in your protocol, and then maintain a timeline. This is basically for projects in which you have to train the people, and then you have to make questionnaires, and then who will do the questionnaire, and it's a big sample. So you have to make a timeline. It is usually not there in the students protocols that we like, but if you have a multi-centric trial, if you're planning a trial, in that you really need to make a timeline of the project. Then how this study is going to be applicable, and how are you going to analyze the data. Now, it's very important to understand that what are the risks that can be there in the research, because you are planning to do a research, but then if you have to define that how your research tools or your research interventions going to have some risk. Less than minimal is like, you're doing a research with the data which is already placed in your hospital, because there's less than minimal. Minimal would be like something like a chest X-ray or taking some body fluids, like which is not invasive. Then low risk will be like if you are taking, if you're trying to, do a small procedure, after which there can be a brief period of pain, like a daycare surgery. Or the low risk surgery, there is a low procedure in which you are not expecting too much, risk in that. High can be when you're trying to use an invasive thing. You're using a drug or a device and an invasive procedure like a lumbopuncture, or you're doing an endoscopy procedure, something which is more invasive, that's a high risk. And serious adverse effect is something which was not expected, which results in death, which leads to an unplanned admission of a patient in the hospital, which leads to prolongation of his stay purely because of the being part of the research that led to these consequences. So this is the latest list of serious adverse events which were published in the Gazette, and it's from the 2019. Now, if there is a serious adverse effect, it's very important for the researcher to understand that there are certain set of responsibilities which he or she has to fulfill. Within 24 hours, they have to inform the sponsor. If there is a sponsor, they have to inform their Institute Ethics Committee. They have to inform the DCGI. And then the Institute Ethics Committee also has a role to, inform the head of the institute. And within, 14 days, even the Ethics Committee has to inform to the DCGI. And then they have to prepare a complete report within 30 days and inform the DCGI. So there are certain ethical, responsibilities with these patients, and whatever protocol we are preparing, that should be in line with the principles of Declaration of Helsinki. So while you are planning a study, and if you think that it is a study which will require cost for purchasing the certain drugs or instruments, that has to be put in the budget. The protocol should have very detailed what budget you are expecting, whether it's a recurring or a non-recurring, whether you are trying to enroll a manpower for it, how are you going to manpower, which manpower, for what duration, all this should be there in the budget. Plus there should be, if there's a study in which you're expecting any serious adverse effect, that you have to have even an insurance for that. But in a student research, then it is the institute which is responsible for paying for any compensation or for any insurance of a research related injury. So there are certain formulas which are available to calculate these clinical trials, and there are different for different, like for if you're expecting there might be a death, because in certain ICU, like if you're trying to do certain research in which you feel that there is the invasiveness or the serious adverse effect risk is very high, so then so that has to be calculated. And if it's a sponsor who's there, then these have to be included in the budget, and that budget has to be first get sanctioned from your research committee and your institute ethics committee, and only after they can be becomes verified to be used in your protocol. Then this is just briefly to tell you the reference writing. It is very important that if you are using it depends from institute to institute. Like in our institute, we use 6 authors followed by the name of the study, the journal name in Vancouver style, year, volume, and pages. So it is different for different institutes. And for journals, of course, you have to follow their protocol. That is beyond the preview of today's talk. So then there has to be a plagiarism. There are research, their engines are available on the Google, and certain institutes have their own plagiarism. iAuthenticate is the best one, which is currently available. So the students have to prepare a performa and information sheet and consent form, which will be dealt in the next lecture. It is very important that whatever written is in the protocol, it has to be followed in principle. We cannot deviate from the principle. Any deviation which is noted in the protocol, it becomes, and the patient suffers any serious adverse effect, it is very seriously taken up. Recently, there has been in 2013, the SPIRIT protocol has come. That is the standardized protocol for interventional trials, and it has 33 items and questions, something like what we have heard earlier as like consort guidelines. So this is basically SPIRIT for interventional trials. It has come up with. This can be a very guiding lines for the researchers who are trying to, in the initial part of research, and they are trying to do studies on that. So for the ethics, we all need to go through these guidelines of good clinical practice, because they tell you how we can assure that the data and the results are credible and they're accurate, and how to informed consent, how to make sure that when you're taking vulnerable groups, how to take care of them, their integrity, their autonomy, how to prevent beneficence and not cause any harm to them, and how to provide justice. So we all have ethics committee in our hospitals, need not go in detail. Then there is this is about the Declaration of Helsinki. The Helsinki has been revised 5 times, and it proposes that any new method, any new intervention which you're planning, it should be used or compared with the best current proven therapy, whether it's prophylactic, diagnostic, because we cannot compare something which is not proven. We cannot deprive a patient with the standard of care. Now, the medical research is only justified if it's reasonably likelihood that the population in which the research is carried out and that they are going to get benefit. Maybe not directly, but yes, indirectly, they should be benefited. That population should be benefited. Now the role of placebo. Very recently, they were like the use of placebo was caught into controversy. So normally we're going to compare it with the standard of care. But since if there are no proven intervention exists, the use of placebo or no intervention is acceptable only in very few indications, like the intervention which is less effective than the best proven one. The use of placebo or no intervention is absolutely necessary to determine the safety of an intervention without any additional risk or serious harm. So extreme care must be taken that you don't use a placebo option. Rather, an equivalency trial would be a better alternative than to use a placebo. Placebo is like you're just giving saline, via the needle and not giving any drug. And so there are a lot of issues with placebo, invasive placebo, non-invasive placebo. So there are another discussion of topic of discussion. So we should make sure that now recently there has been a lot of multinational companies who are coming to India or in other poorer countries where they want to do certain clinical trials. But then we should all understand that these poor countries are not a guinea pigs for them. So basically it should only be allowed in countries like us if this interventional will prove safe and effective, and if they're likely to benefit our patients, our host countries, and this treatment would be available to our patients, not that they just do the research and go away from here. No, that should be even available to these set of patients. So in externally sponsored collaborative trials, the ethical obligation to ensure that the biomedical research for which they are responsible in such countries contribute effectively to the national or the local capacity, to the design, the conduct, and to provide scientific and ethical review and monitoring. So it's not that they just come here with their protocol and they get clarified from our Institute Ethics Committee. No, they have to get it done from their institute also, because they has to get them scrutinized in their ethics committee and then come to the developing countries. So they have come up with this Council for International Organization of Medical Sciences in 2002, and they effectively talk about like what is expected from these and how these developing countries can make sure that there is no breach of ethical compliance in our patients. So it is a 21 specific guidelines. We can all go through it. And we have the DCGI, which approves the new investigational drug. So what is actually a new investigational product? Like a pharmacological form of an ingredient, which includes a product with a marketing authorization. So we should understand that they want to market it, and that is why they want an approval. But on the other hand, contrary, if we are doing an academic clinical trial, in which a clinical trial of a drug has already been proven, but then it is an investigator, like if I'm doing it or if I'm supervising a student for a new indication or a new route, but then that is purely for research purposes, and I'm not going to seek any approval of the central licensing authority for marketing it. So we all are doing research, but then that's only purely for academic purpose, and we are not breaching any of the good clinical practice guidelines. We also have our own ICMR guidelines of 2017. Just want to briefly tell you that the Institute Ethics Committee should make sure that there's no conflict of interest among the researchers. The policies and the protocols are implemented correctly. They should monitor the research. The researcher should also make sure that they are maintaining the documents properly, they're taking the consent properly, they're doing the procedure properly. And also, there should be a disclosure of conflict of interest, if any, present. The data and the performer, after the research is completed. So we have to maintain that at least for 3 years in case of a biomedical and health research, and at least 5 years for clinical trial. This is mandatory, and it is there in our Indian guidelines, which we have to maintain. So plagiarism, fabrication, and falsification, they are just part of the publication ethics. I will not be covering in this talk. So just to conclude, the scientific proposal should follow a logical approach. We should comply with the protocol, and we should maintain ethics at all times. Thank you so much.
Madam has covered the topic very nicely. She has elaborated all the points. I would like to say something more about the ethical issues, because students should be aware of those ethical issues. Otherwise, they will end up in trouble. Sometimes we don't know. Nowadays, people are going for the court for every now and then. So it is better that they should be aware of those particular parts. Actually, the research is a pillar of the knowledge. And we doctors are privileged because we have got a direct relation with the patients, and we know most of the things about the patients. And so we have immunity from accountability due to the high public regard. But this is the disadvantage because it leads to unethical researches also. The very example of it is World War II, where people have done the researches, but at the cost of the unethical experiment, at the cost of the harms and sometimes the death. Now the second part has entered into this particular research problem, and that is the pharmaceutical companies. But as Madam has said, they should take the safeguard about the patient safety first and then other things. She has talked about the declaration of the Helsinki, and that in 1997 one committee was formed which was known as COPE, COPE, that has given the breaches of research and the publication ethics. And I think students should go through that and just read that. About the study design and everything, Madam has already talked, and she did a very nice elaborative part of it. And not only that, but we must keep the secrecy about most of the things, because we have said it that we will keep it secret about the patient safety, patient's details and other things. When we recruit the patients for our research, we must give them clear-cut idea about everything what Madam has said, the benefits and harms and other things, and they should be informed that they can leave the research at any time. They have got liberty to leave the research at any time, and that must be included in the protocols which we are giving to the committee, IEC or IRB. Consent is a must, and we know there are so many breaches and we'll end up in the courts because of that. But consent is a must from either the parents or from the subjects or from the some of the companies which are there or there. Data analysis, she has already said, and it must be done very nicely, and there should be no intentional omission of the results. That is an important part which is seen nowadays, should not be there. No misleads, no misinterpretation, no fabrication, no falsification of the data. Even if it is unintentional, but it should not be there. Misconduct of research should not be there at all, because this is a serious ethical issue, and it undermines the scientific integrity and at the same time institutional credibility also. At the same time, it causes waste of the funding and time and the resources also. So it should not occur. We should not go for that at all. And it has been observed, even in my institute also, it has been observed that report of the negative research findings is done less. That is a tendency. On the contrary, I would say that if you do it, it might be a credibility to you that you are giving the negative points also. Sometimes there are fights for the authorship, and we all know that the research papers now are essential for so many things. So it should be very clear in the proposal itself that who will be the author of that. There should be no conflict of interest about the authors and other things. And it should be very clearly mentioned that who will be the contributors, who will be the author, and who will be acknowledged into that particular part. Their names or their whatever it is should be mentioned into the proposals very clearly. Conflict of interest, she has talked about it. But I would say only one thing about the conflict of interest, that there are so many parts in the conflict of interest, that it is personal, commercial, or it is political, academic, or financial, whatever it is. Everybody can tune it according to their needs about that. But this discussion should be done earlier. It should not occur at the end where you have done everything. And it should not affect the methodology and the outcome of the research at all. Or whatever you want to fight or you want to put on the board or on the paper, it should be done earlier only. There should be no redundant publications. There should be no redundant publications. Because 2 or more papers without cross references, sharing the same information, no good at all. That is a redundant publication. Plagiarism, she has already talked of it. And I would like to say one thing about self-plagiarism. Self-plagiarism is a thing where you publish the abstract of it earlier, before submission of the paper. So, and you submit the paper later on, or you publish the paper later on with full disclosures, whatever you have done. That is a self-plagiarism. Please don't do that. Please don't do that again, I would say. Now today is the era of competition where everything is required for appointments, for promotions, for grant of application. Everything is influenced by the research or publication. So even the researchers are also under pressure that when it is to be published, how it is to be published. It should be published in a time where I want it. And I will not be wrong in saying that there are certain persons who wants to increase their CV by doing the dishonest ways, but one should not do it. I would not recommend anybody to do it in that particular part. And plagiarism, we have already said about the plagiarism, but one few things about the anonymity I would like to say that in this particular part you don't know the particular information or identification of the participants. That is anonymity. But what is confidentiality? Confidentiality, you know it very well, but you are keeping it hidden. And one more term has come into this particular part. Madam must have gone through it, and that is pseudo nominalization. That is that you know all the identification marks of the participants, but you are keeping it separate by giving them a number. Just give them a number to their self information pro forma. Say I will say 111, and the same number is given to the file which is there prepared for that particular participant 111. But we remove that particular part of the self information from the file so that nobody can connect any information to any other part, or that cannot happen. Only the person who has got numbers that can manage that particular part. Other things I would say very well, but we should avoid this particular part of ethical issues. Should be very clear while doing our proposals, either at IRB or ethical committee, whatever it is. But we should not at all propagate any wrong thing amongst our students. Not at all. Even if they publish their papers late, but should not go for the improper things, not for improper things. Thank you very much, madam. You had a very nice lecture. I'm really impressed with your lecture, and you have covered in a small time. You have covered everything whatever is required. I hope students will get benefited with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Actually, sir, I didn't cover that little part of vulnerable groups because Dr. Manisha is going to talk about this in the consent.
I know. Yes,
so I thought she'll be going through it. So thank you so much, sir, for your appreciation and your valuable, inputs for the students. And thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Dr. Vanita, just want to add certain things here. First of all, greetings to our teacher of teachers, Dr. Tejpal sir. Dr. Katyal sir is listening very patiently. Sir is also. Then greetings to our GC member, Dr. Ashok Deshpande and Dr. Sunil Sethi, and a very eminent speaker, Dr. Manisha KATIKAR, Dr. Vanita, and all the colleagues and my friends. Whatever Dr. Deshpande has said is absolutely true, but I will just add further that it's not the responsibility of the authors only, because majority of the authors have just passed their PG career. They are in a senior residency when they publish their papers. Somehow these things have to be taught during their PG curriculum by the teachers. The teachers are equally responsible for carrying out the ethical atmosphere in our research platforms. Moreover, these things, whatever have been discussed, I will just like to say to Dr. Deshpande sir that these things actually we are covering in the research methodology series. There are many things which we have said we are going to cover in the future lectures also. Those will be coming. And this was the basically research proposal topic. She has covered very well. I just want to ask her one thing, that if we suppose we want to take ASA 3 patients for the research, how are you going to formulate your research plan for the, to submit either to your institutional ethical committee or even to the ICMR projects? That is one question. And second part is, during the research process, the insurance part I'm not going to touch because it is a very big issue to discuss on this small platform. Just suppose there is not just adverse event, some death occurs, mortality occurs in a patient, whether you will proceed with that research project or you will abandon that research project there and then. These are two important things you should, if you think, you can develop on those points.
Yes, sir. So if you are planning a study with ASA 3 patients in, keeping in mind, so we have to see what is the intervention or, what we are planning for them. So depending upon the invasiveness of that, we have to, of course, as you mentioned about the, the information should be very well, documented in the patient information sheet. It should be documentation should be very well in the consent form, and that should be in the vernacular language. It should be, kind of an explained in a way that the patient can, estimate, like I said, what are the serious adverse effects, or what is the, the high risk, the side effects which can occur. That should be very well documented in our information sheet as well as in consent form. Then the information sheet should also be provided to the patient. Then we have to also make sure that if you're trying to do an intervention, which we can think can be more harmful, so the risk benefit is very important. We can plan for in our proposal only, we can write that there can be an interim analysis that we can do. So if we find in the interim analysis that if we are having a, this intervention is not working in favor of the patients, we can stop it. If we find that it is, yes, it is working in the favor of the patient, then we can recalculate the sample size, and that should be already mentioned. And then we should be, seeing the percentage of benefit, and we can go for the study. As far as death is concerned, then if there's a death occurs, that is a serious adverse event. Now that death, first of all, has to be reported to the Institute Ethics Committee, has to be reported to the, higher authorities, and then it should also be, probed into that what was the cause of the death, whether it was just related to the research itself, whether it was incidental, or whether it was, what was the main cause of death. So that has to be, probed. The researcher will be informing, but then it is the Institute Ethics Committee and the Institute Committee which will be, going into the details. Now here comes the role of the, had you explained that in the consent form? Had you informed the patient about it? Is your vigilance and your, management is as per the protocol? So at that point, all these things will be taken up, and that is the responsibility of the researcher and the team to be adhering to the protocol. So if we have, planned the study, and that the study is, it is in coordination with the seriousness of the intervention, or the what we had planned. If it's according to that, then we can, justify it. And definitely we will never do a research, something which will be more harmful to the patient than benefit to the patient. Yes, there are certain, cancer trials, or, in oncology, or in where you have very serious patients and you don't have any standard of care. There you want to give a therapy which may be beneficial. So in those cases, then all those things have to be documented and, kept so that whenever such a serious adverse event occurs, we should be able to, have it. And then you should have very good, already there should be a protocol, should be mentioning that what to do in these type of patient, whether you go ahead with the treatment, whether how you, and then compensation and what medical management you are trying to do. All that should be documented beforehand in the protocol.
That's right. Because I do agree, but the basic idea was that when during PG, I think when you are doing the thesis work, what my message to the entire teaching fraternity of our age is that the communication skills of our PG students cannot be, say, updated or that much well established that they can communicate to the, because we are facing a variety of the patient, their intellectual levels, their economic levels, and their understanding of the thing. Regarding the explanation of all the possible adverse events, if you tell them clearly, they will never participate in the research. Now here comes the role of the teacher. When the PG student is assigned a thesis, what I suggested is that for the first few cases, if the patient is involved there, it's the duty of the teacher how to communicate with the patient during the explanation of all the adverse events, so that in the future the student learn the right method, how to do the research, how to communicate, because majority of the problem which occurs later on after death or mortality or morbidity, they are basically root cause is the communication gap. That is very important. So why I want to convey this thing, any therapeutic misadventure may occur, you have to explain it. With that interim analysis we can always do, but I think already we have started the communication skill workshops in many areas. Even in DMC, Dr. Gautam is also doing that. So I am just saying that those part, the first part of the research, the teacher should take a lead in helping the PG students so that the things go smooth, even if any adverse event occurs. Very good, Dr. Vanita, very good. You did a very nice job. Really
Thank you,
nice.
sir.
Dr. Bajwa, see the name given to the
Yes, sir.
teacher
Yes,
is
sir.
guide.
Yes.
Name given to the teacher is a guide of the student, and he has to guide at all levels, not only in academics,
Yeah.
at all levels. That includes the communication also. He has to communicate in front of his student in such a manner that students should learn the things out of that. Not like that. This language should not be used at all, even by the teacher, isn't it? So these things has to be
That's what
really very nicely put up in front of the students and communication with the patients there. Then only they will understand these things. That is why it is called as a guide, not only research teacher, but a guide also, isn't it? Yes. Thank you, Bajwa, for your good comment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Dr. Mayank sir, would you like to add something? Dr. Mayank, the other second chairperson.
Oh, thank you so much. I think so. Everything has been covered very comprehensively by Vanita ma'am. Congratulations, ma'am, for the excellent presentation. I think so. We are already running short of time, so I think so. It's time for the second presentation. I don't have anything much to add.
Before we move on to the second,
Dr. Mayank.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bajwa, thank you. Call sir, thank you. Thank you very much.
Sir. Thank you.
Shefali, thank you for good introduction of mine. Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. Should I leave with the permission of everybody?
Yes,
Because
sir.
I got my
Sure,
OPD
sir.
now. I got
Please,
my OPD now.
please, sir, please. Thank
Please,
you for,
please.
sir. Thank you for attending the
Thank you.
seminars. Thank you, sir. Thank
And
you.
I could come here because the inspection, NNC inspection was online. It was online.
Okay.
Yesterday and today it was online. It finished at 4 o'clock, so I rushed to my house because I had to join at 6 o'clock. Otherwise, Tanvir would have become unhappy with me. Tanvir, thank you very much. Thanks
Thank you,
for coordinating.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Oh, sir, thank you. See you sometimes physically somewhere. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sure,
Thank you.
sure. My privilege.
Yes,
My
sir. Thank
privilege.
you.
We'll meet
Thank you.
some.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vinita. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next lecture, I would like our patrons of ISA Punjab, Dr. Tejkaur sir, Dr. Avtar Singh sir, and Dr. Katyal sir to say a few words. Dr. Kaul sir, please.
Dr. Tanvir, you want to say me something?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Both this Dr. Vanita madam has been superb, and the Dr. Deshpande and Dr. Bajwa has made excellent remarks and very informative. Need of the hour. It is absolutely essential, particularly for the budding anesthetists, those who join in the residency program. Very, very informative. Thanks to the speakers and thanks to the organizers and the people who participated in the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Avtar Singh sir.
Tanvir, thank you so much. It was a very nicely delivered talk and very well covered. And Dr. Bajwa brought in the issue of ASA patient, ASA grade 3 patient, and the communication component, all that thing. Despite all our best effort to have explained to the patient everything, every risk, and when the patient know that patient is in a research group, there are still chances if there is something goes wrong, they are going to blame it on you that, okay, it is because of the new drug they use, our patient died or our patient has suffered. So that aspect has to be there always in mind, that this thing can also be interpreted in this way. How much we can cover in the discussion, pre-anesthesia discussion with the patient, risk explaining patient, because it depends upon our skill and also the capability of the patient and their relative to understand what we are talking. So ultimately what happens is something goes wrong, they want to find an excuse and then they blame, okay, a navi drug ditti si science admission market. So that component cannot be ignored. So I think we have to be alert on that part. Thank you so much. This is what I wanted to say.
Dr. Katyal sir, Dr. Sunil Katyal sir.
Respected Dr. Kaul, my teacher, my friends, warm welcome to everyone. I congratulate Dr. Naresh Anand and Dr. Tanvir Singh, ably guided by Dr. Bajwa, for organizing this event. We have two eminent speakers with us, Dr. Manisha Katikar, good evening, ma'am, and Dr. Vanita for their input. And this webinar will allow us to think minutely on various aspects of the research, which will help our future generations. In the audience, I could see Dr. Sunil Sethi, Dr. Ajay Gupta, and then Dr. Shok Deshpande, chairperson. They are senior IS, they are ISS stalwarts. They are true leaders of ISA. And Dr. Rakesh Garg also. They are true leaders. A few days back, in one of the IMA meetings, I told somebody we should be leaders, not politicians. He told me, क्या फर्क है? एक ही बात है, politicians और leaders तो एक ही बात होती है. मैंने कहा नहीं. Politician is concerned about the next elections, while leader is concerned about the next generation. So we should be leader, not politicians. A leader is one when your actions inspire future generations to dream more, plan more, do more, and become more. Then you are a true leader. So, dosto, now I conclude. In the end, I will say, किस कदर अदा करूं शुक्रिया उस खुदा का, अल्फाज नहीं मिलते, जिंदगी इतनी खूबसूरत ना होती अगर आप जैसे दोस्त ना मिलते. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Ji. Sir, we have two GC members, Dr. Sunil Sethi, sir.
Very nice, sir.
And Dr. Rajiv Gupta, sir. Sir, Dr. Rajiv Gupta, sir, could we have few words from your side? Dr. Rajiv Gupta, sir, are you there?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Dr. Tejkaul, Dr. Avtar Singh, Dr. Katyal, Dr. Sunil Sethi, Dr. Tanveer, and all the dignitaries in the meeting. It was a very nice lecture and it was quite informative also. And to that, Dr. Bajwa also added regarding ASA Gate 3 patients. Here, I would like to ask one thing, if you are taking grade 3 patients for research purposes, if some calamity happens, so what would be the medical legal aspect in that patient and how to cover these things? Though we explain each and everything to the patients and to the ethical committee also, we have all the gadgets, we have all the monitoring and all the devices and backup ICU also, everything. But if some untoward incident happens, so what would be the take and how to prevent us from the medical legal implications? Otherwise, the talk was very good and very informative. I congratulate each and every one of the panelists and the speakers. Thank you.
Sir, if there is a death which was expected, then definitely it was well informed in time and well informed in the consent and information sheet. And here I would again say, yes, Dr. Bajwa also highlighted the point of communication skills. So how we communicate, when we communicate, what content we use, whether when we are communicating, whether they are listening to us, whether they're understanding what we are saying, that plays a very important role. So if the communication was sufficiently, they were able to understand, then they should not be a problem. But yes, if there's a sudden death, which was not a part of the, the trial, or it just happened unexpectedly. Now here, if we have documented that in our protocol, and if there is already there, if it is not there, then yes, it is the responsibility of the institute. If it is a student-initiated trial, the institute has to take care of the medical management, and then here again it is dependent upon whether it is the some morbidity has occurred or a mortality has occurred. So there are different compensations for morbidity and mortality, and then it is the institute which has to take care of this. But yes, definitely, if we are vigilant and we are getting a good communications with our patients and we are being vigilant, and then we have to make sure that we have done our record keeping, and all that also is done. So this I'm talking only if the death is because of the research initiated trial. If it is not, then again we can if it is not because of the research, then it has to be documented that how it was not because of research. It has to be proved. And at the same time, the researcher has to inform the Institute Ethics Committee within 24 hours, and also the DCGI. And here comes the role of the institute initiated investigation into whether it's a breach of the protocol or whether it was just an incidental finding. They have to send a report to the DCGI within 30 days. And DCGI also constructs a further committee to find out what was the cause of the death. So it is both ways, like you have to use the information system also has to be followed, the cause also has to be found out, and also for the benefit of the patient, at least the medical management has to be provided free of cost till the patient is fine. And then the financial implications come once it is proved, and whether it is only morbidity or it is mortality, then the financial comes later, because the patient is most important for us. We have to take care of the patient in all situations, because the autonomy of the patient, justice, and beneficence is the most important. We have to cause no harm to the patient. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for explaining so nicely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Tanvir, can I make a comment, if you permit?
Yes, yes, sir.
Well, when we are conducting a research and trying to prove particular intervention or particular drug or particular methodology will be useful or will not be useful to the patient, is it advisable to try this on a patient which is already a risk patient, ASA grade 3? This is my question.
Sir, if we are basically any new interventional trial, first of all, if it is by a sponsorer, then it has to be the DCGI. That has to be through the DCGI approval after that, for any sponsored trial from a pharmaceutical company. But if it is an approved drug and we're using some new indication or certain dose, and the academician is doing that trial, excuse me, please, can you just mute the mic of someone? So I'm just saying that if it is a investigator-initiated trial and we are doing in a very high-risk patient, then yes, we have to make sure that the standard treatment, it has to be compared with the standard treatment. If there is no standard treatment, then if we are using some new drug, some new intervention, then that has to be documented well that this is a new intervention. We are not having any standard of care for this particular problem, and we are trying this new drug, and it may benefit, it may not benefit. So that has to be again documented and told, and here comes the role of the communication skills, the documentation. So only after that it can be tried. This is for patients in which usually these type of trials are done in cancer patients, or in patients in which there is no standard of care, and you are trying to try a new drug which is may benefit or may not benefit. In this is the phase 4 trials, like first, second, and third. They are of course the research based. They are the phase 1, 2, and 3. So this is the phase 4 trial in which you're trying to use that. That has to be, this is the clinician initiated trials which I'm talking is phase 4. Thank you. I think I addressed the question, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Vidya, that was fine. Tanvir, can we move on to the next lecture? We are running short of time also. Tanvir, you are muted.
So we'll start with the next lecture. Just I'm sharing the screen. Dr. Shifali, can you introduce the next chairperson?
Yes. Now we'll come to the second session for the day. Chairpersons for the second session are Dr. Sunil Sethi and Dr. Vivek Gupta. Dr. Sunil Sethi is Governing Council Member, ISA National and Consultant Anesthesiologist at Virk Hospital, Karnal. He's been past President ISA Haryana, past Secretary ISA Haryana, and Treasurer RSACP National. His areas of interest are intensive care and labor anesthesia. Next chairperson is Dr. Vivek Gupta. Dr. Vivek Gupta is Consultant Cardiac Anesthetist at Intensive Care and Coordinator of ECMO Program at Hero DMC Heart Institute, Ludhiana. He is Vice President of ECMO Society of India, past Secretary of ECMO Society of India. He is Instructor and Training Site Coordinator of ISA CPR course. He's been awarded Fellowship of Indian College of Critical Care Medicine and Fellowship of Indian Association of Cardiovascular Anesthesiologists. He's won National Award for ISA CPR training in 2019. He has 25 publications to his credit, which includes 8 international and 17 national publications. His areas of interest are ECMO and toxicology, basic advanced CPR training, renal replacement therapies in ICU, infection control in ICU. May I now request the chairpersons to kindly introduce the speaker for the session.
Manisha ma'am, can you share the screen?
Dr. Sunil sir, please.
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Teche Kaul sir, and Dr. Avtar Singh, Dr. Sunil Katyal, Dr. Bajwa, and I see so many senior faculty from ISA Punjab and the area surrounding areas. Please accept my well wishes. Today we have Dr. Manisha Katikar as the speaker. She is President Maharashtra State ISA chapter. She is Associate Editor IJA, and she is National ISA Coordinator for Cultural Club. She has been GC member Maharashtra State chapter from 2008 to 2010. She is founder editor of newsletter of Maharashtra State ISA, and she held various posts in Maharashtra State ISA as Secretary-elect, Secretary Vice President, President-elect from 2014 to 2021. She has received proficiency award thrice in ISACON Calcutta, ISACON Bangalore, and ISACON Ahmedabad. And she has received Calls Award also. This time in Ahmedabad, we were there and we saw her energy level, and she received Rukmani Award, Dr. Rukmani Pandit Award also at Ahmedabad. And I welcome Madam for her speak. Please, Madam, you can start your speak.
Sorry to interrupt. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Venkat Giri, our National
Yes.
ISA President, has also logged in. We welcome you, sir. And we are really thankful for participating in Punjab ISA activity.
Good evening, sir. Dr. Venkat Giri. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you.
Sir, we would like you to say a few words at the end of this lecture, sir. Please stay with us. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Giri sir, be there in the by the end of this talk, please. Giri sir.
I'm there.
Okay.
I'm there.
Respected chairperson for today's session, Dr. Sunil Sethi, Dr. Vivek Gupta, respected Dr. Tej Kaul sir, Dr. Avtar Singh sir, Dr. Sunil Katyal sir, respected National President ISA, Dr. Venkat Giri sir, respected Dr. Naresh Anand and Dr. Tanvir Singh, respected Dr. Sukhinder Singh Bajwa sir, Associated Editor-in-Chief of IJ, my co-faculty, Dr. VANITA AHUJA, and all the respected seniors and dear friends. I'm really thankful to you all for inviting me here on this prestigious dais of ISA Punjab. Now, Dr. Tanvir Singh, I'm really sorry for sharing my screen earlier because there are a lot of connectivity issues at my end. And finally, I had to log in through my iPad. Dr. Vanita nicely explained about preparation of research proposal and submission of that. And once it is approved, there comes the turn of clinical trial registration. She also mentioned that beginning is the most difficult. But I must say that clinical trial registration is one of the simplest procedures that can be done online, and it is must if you want to publish, and in fact, if you want to start your original research work, and also if you want to publish in any of the reputed journals all over the world. For clinical trial registration in India, it is launched on 28 June 2007. It is a free searchable online platform for registration of clinical trials being conducted in India and as well as in countries which do not have a primary registry of their own. It is one of the most important requirements for publication of clinical trials across most of the journals, as it plays an important role in evidence-based clinical practice. So it is a joint venture of ICMR and National Institute of Medical Statistics. And from the year June 2019, prospective registration of clinical trials have become mandatory requirement of the CTRI. Trials which are registered in CTRI conform to the WHO's trial registry criteria for the content and quality, as well as validity, accessibility, unique identification, and technical capacity. It can also be searched through the WHO ICTRP, that is the International Critical Trial Registry portal. So WHO International Clinical Trial Research Portal says that registration of all interventional trials is a scientific, ethical, and moral responsibility. It is thus the responsibility of the principal investigator or the research supervisor to ensure prospective registration of the trial. It is necessary to advance transparency in clinical research, and this is a very important point. From 1st April 2018, trials in which the patient's enrollment has not yet commenced are registered on Clinical Trial Registry of India. So this is very important point for the PG students to know. So which clinical studies are registered? Study which plans to conduct a trial involving human participants of any intervention, such as drugs, surgical procedure, preventive measures, lifestyle modification, devices, educational and behavioral treatment, and rehabilitation strategies. Trials which are conducted in purview of Department of AYUSH are also now registered under Clinical Trial Registry. Multi-center studies where India is a participating country, they are also registered under CTRI. And for Clinical Trial Registry, it is important that we need to submit ethical committee approval and DCGI approval also if it is applicable, and this has become necessary for now trial registration in CTRI. So why it is important? Why it is discussed so much? This is because prospective trial registration would help to prevent selective reporting and publication of positive results. It will prevent unnecessary duplication of research efforts. It will empower patients and public about the planned trials, and it will also allow researchers to access the studies being conducted and compare them to their research. So how do you perform a CTRI? To register clinical trials, registrants must first register as user. He has to log in, obtain a user name and password. He has to log in the website www.ctri.nic.in, fill the new user form online and submit it online. And the most important thing about CTRI is the data is electronically searchable. Registrants can submit a trial for registration at any point of the day on any day of the week, and it can be searched at any point, any time of the day or any day of the week. So this is very important. That is why I said it is one of the simplest processes that can be done online. But most of the time, because of
बोलना शुरू इन्होंने तो बोल ही नहीं है अभी, तो डिस्कशन तो बड़ा बाद में होगा. कि डाउट्स क्लियरिंग सेशन.
So most of the times the people are ignorant or the PG students are ignorant, and original research is started without registering their original research on the clinical trial registry. So when to register? This is also important. The trial should be registered in the CTRI before enrollment of the first participant. Who will register? It is the duty of principal investigator to register the trial. In the multi-centric or multi-sponsored trial, the lead principal investigator or the lead sponsor should register the trial. In multinational trial, the Indian principal investigator should register the trial in CTRI, installing the relevant registration numbers in registries of other countries. So what are the steps of trial registration? Register in the CTRI by clicking on the new applicant on the CTRI home page. Fill the form online and click on the submit button. Though this slide looks like very difficult topic, but it is a very easy because you get the instruction as soon as you start submitting the trial research on trial registration. So log into CTRI, upload trial data, add new trial, The form must be filled online only and may be filled in parts as per the registrant's convenience. Please present information in proper sentence format using proper upper and lower case alphabets with proper spacing as all information is viewable globally. Upload ethics and, if applicable, DCGI approval. Once the form is filled, click on the submit button. In case all fields are not filled, the trial will not be submitted and fields requiring attention would be highlighted with a cross. If all trial data set from items are filled, an acknowledgement number, that is a reference number, is assigned to the trial, which should be quoted in all trial related correspondence. And this is also very important at this stage, that this is just an acknowledgement reference number and it is not the unique number of clinical trial registry that has been allotted to your original research. So you should not stop at this stage. Once a trial is submitted, the trial is viewable but not editable by the registrant. After review by a CTRI scientist, the trial may be sent back in case any changes or additional information is needed. Verification mail may be sent to the mentioned contact person other than the trial registrant. A trial will be registered upon satisfaction of all clarifications and modifications that has been required by the clinical registry scientist. And once they are satisfied, a unique registration number is provided to the trial. For postgraduate thesis, concerned guide should account as principal investigator while registering. Without the attachment of scanned ethical committee approval letter, the submission of trial is incomplete, and therefore before CTRI, one must have the ethical committee approval for the original research. Avoid medical jargons for the public title, and it should be written in an easy to understand words for the lay people. Registering once is not the end of exercise, and data is to be updated in the registry time to time as the trial progresses. So the registration data includes various points like registration number, trial registration date, scientific title of the study, principal investigator, contact person, primary sponsor, secondary sponsor, countries of recruitment, site of study, name of ethics committee and approval status, regulatory clearance obtained from DCGI or not, health condition and the problem studied, and type of the study. It also includes various inclusion-exclusion criteria, methods of generating randomization sequence, methods of allocation concealment, blinding and masking, target sample size, phase of trial, date of first enrollment, estimated duration of trial, status of trial, publication, brief summary, date of actual study completion, final enrollment number. So the vision of CTRI is to ensure that every clinical trial conducted in the region is prospectively registered with full disclosure of the trial data set items. While this register is meant primarily for trials conducted in India, the CTRI will also accept registration of trials conducted in other countries in the region which do not have primary registry of its own. Trials registered in CTRI will be monitored to ensure increasing voluntary disclosure of all the items in the register. So why it is important again? It improves transparency and accountability, improves internal validity of trials, conform to accepted ethical standards, reporting of all relevant results of registered trial is evident. Prospective trial registration will prevent selective reporting and publication of positive results. There will be prevention of unnecessary duplication of research. The second important part for today's discussion, a very important aspect again, is the patient consent. So when publishing a personal information about identifiable living patient, we need to have a signed copy of patient consent permission form. Authors should seek the patient's consent to publication before submitting any article. You need to scan the completed form into the computer, upload it to the online editorial office as a supplementary file for editors only while submitting it. Informed consent forms can serve as a legal documents and can be used as evidence in the case of lawsuit that is related to the study. Patients have a right to privacy that should not be violated without informed consent. So is patient consent required for research? Yes. When conducting a clinical research, you must obtain informed consent from the patient. Informed consent is a procedure through which a competent subject, after having received and understood all the research-related information, can voluntarily provide his and her willingness to participate in a clinical trial. So the entire informed consent process involves giving a subject adequate information concerning the study, providing adequate opportunity for the subject to consider all the options, responding to the subject's question, ensuring that the subject has comprehended this information, obtaining the subject's voluntary agreement for the research. So there are certain exceptions where it may or may not be necessary to obtain the consent. When we want to publish images such as X-rays, laparoscopic images, ultrasound images, brain scans, pathology slides, etc., which do not reveal the identity of the patient, then we may not obtain the patient's consent. When we are using images from the published prior publication, then it may not be necessary, but the author should provide the appropriate attribution for the republished images. Thank you very much. I think I finished it so that the extended time we can use it for discussion.
Excellent discussion, madam. You have covered very well that because it needs a lot of awareness that how these registries should be entered and we should register all trials what we are doing. So that everything is centralized and we are getting a lot of feedbacks from them. Few things I would like to add, like this is very important, as you rightly said, that all prospective trials should be included in the registry. So this is very important that even we are registered, even you registered the first case, and after that, if you are trying to register this for the registry, then it will not be accepted. Even for the retrospective analysis, you want to do any observational trial or retrospective analysis, data collection, is still before taking the first patient for this registry, you must ensure that you have registered. And submitting only the application does not ensure that you are registered, because it will take 7 to 10 days for processing. And once they issue you a number, then it will be taken as a registered for this registry. And second issues, people always think that I'm registered with some other trial or some other group. So should we register with CTRI or not? So it should be registered with the CTRI, because you can always mention that it is already registered with this particular registry and this with a particular number, and you can get a registration through this. And for consent, I would like to a very, very important thing, because you highlighted the importance of the consent, that it should be in the language which patient understand. And most of the time we just explain, when we go, we are in a hurry for this, we just explain there is a drug which we are trying on your patient, please sign for it. It should not be the way, because all the members and all the seniors were talking about the communication. Probably this is the time when the communication is most important, that we should give adequate time to the patient or patient attendant, depending upon what is the condition of the patient. Ideally, patient has to give. But suppose there is some certain things where you need a relative consent as well, if patient is not in a position like in the position to give consent for it. So it should be explained thoroughly. We should allow them to ask questions, and that should not be forced to them. And you should, one line has to be added, whether you join this trial or not, it is not going to make any difference on your treatment in this particular hospital. Because sometimes patients are so scared, they feel if I don't say yes, then possibly we will not get adequate. So these things, all these are a part of the consent, but most of the time we just ask them to sign rather than actually ask. So I think this is the practical thing which all of our seniors should always guide their juniors, that communication, and while taking a consent, everything needs to be explained. Thank you.
Dr. Sunil, your comments, please.
Very well covered by Dr. MANISHA KATIKAR, madam, and I think the consent part was very well covered, and other things were also covered very well. I want to say that the local language in which the consent is obtained is more important, and if you are taking a consent, tell them in their own language.
That is, it should be very clear. Like sometimes we have patient from the other areas. We need some communicator that he can help us. We had faced this problem quite a number of times. That's what I want to say. Before I end, I thank the ISA Punjab team, Dr. Naresh, Dr. Tanveer, and Dr. Bajwa sir, Dr. Katyal sir, Dr. Tejkal sir, Dr. Avtar Singh sir. Thank you very much.
Dr. Manisha, it was very nice coverage because you are dealing with these type of things every day in the journal. What I want to highlight further here is that CTRI, now what we are facing in the journal, either it's IJ or GOCP, people do the CTRI, as Dr. Vivek said, it should be done before the first patient is taken for the research. We have seen so many incidences where they do the CTRI when the research has already crossed 6 months or 7 months. That is the most unethical part. It's a tough job for the editor because during the proofreading or the acceptance stage, when we see the CTRI number, there are lots of irregularities, lots of gross irregularities, the date of starting the research there and date of starting the research in the submitted manuscript, they never match actually. This also amounts to the misconduct or whatever you can say, the unethical behavior on the part of the authors. They should know, they should not take anything lightly because this research project is to be highlighted globally, because anybody in the world can log into the CTRI, they can know about the research paper and what has been published. That will send the journal's integrity, journal's reputation suffers when these type of incidences happen. And it's a headache for the editor to look for these things during the acceptance and publishing stage. So I think everybody should behave responsibly. Rightly, we should always, for all the prospective study, the registration should start even before the conduct of research on the first patient. Second part I want to highlight is that the images part. Okay, there is a general policy in everywhere throughout the globe that you have to hide the face of the patient, the identity should not be revealed. But of late, one thing is very disturbing, especially when the Ayushman has come into India. So grossly things are violated, may not be for research, but I think the photograph is taken of with the patient face should be clearly visible along with the specimen removed. I think that maybe monetary things are involved. Maybe they just want to make sure that things are, real, not the fake. But even that part is also, amounting for a researcher or editor. If you see those things, those are quite disturbing things happening in our own society here. These things that never happen even when we were doing for the smile train. For the smile train also, we used to do always cover the picture eyes of the patient whenever we used to, but only the treatment part was shown to the smile train organization. So these are few facts, and the message is very clear. The CTRI always helps in the transparency of the study, and more important message to all the authors who want to get the article published, manuscript published. The CTRI should not be disclosed in the main text file of the article file, so that the double blind peer review process should not be defeated. Because if the CTRI is mentioned in the main article file of the journal, then all the reviewers can log into the CTRI, can know who the authors are, who are the contributors. So it should be for all editors also, CTRI number should be mentioned in the first page file, not in the article file initially. Only during acceptance state, it should be put in the article file. Very well covered topic. And I think if any other person want to ask question is fine. Otherwise, we will like to hear from our president, ISA President, Dr. Venkatagiri.
So I think there is no more questions. So we welcome Dr. Venkatagiri sir, President ISA National. It's an honor for ISA Punjab that in our academic activities sir has joined. Sir, a few words from your side, sir.
Thank you, Tanveer. President Dr. Naresh, Secretary Tanveer, patron and senior most member Dr. Tejgaul sir, Dr. Katyal, Bajwa, then today's faculties, Dr. AHUJA and Dr. Katikar, then chairpersons, my good friend Dr. Sethi and that some call came, I told to reply. And everyone, good evening. Now, actually, I saw the message of Tanvir requesting that you join that. I found that it was interesting. In fact, I sent this to my daughter who had just joined her PG last week, so that you can log in and learn what I don't know whether she has, because I did not call, she was on duty. Log in and see that. That's what the new people should know and learn that, because many people, when we were doing PG, these things are not there. Now new things are coming, and as soon as they join, if they know that, they know from the first day itself, yes, this is the thing what we have to do in the my thesis or whatever it is, because DNB, yes, within 1 week they have to send the thesis and all, they know that. So it's an apt topic during this time. Then the PG course just started. I wish that every state or city branch, they make it, and every PG. Maybe I will ask Naveen, maybe the next topic in All India level also, or this thing should be on this thing, so that every newly joined PG knows it, and they go what exactly they have to, how to go ahead. That will be, should be the topic. Anyway, it was good topic by both of you, and because I was also not knowing many things, and Manisha has explained it very well. Thank you. And with that, we will have good academic programs coming in coming days also. Whenever possible and time permits, I will also join that. Need not call me to talk and all. I will join, be a passive person and see that. Thank you for calling and giving opportunity, and all the best once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. And it will be really great to have you in our future lectures. And if there are any queries from anyone, any questions, then we can, or we can say goodbye, and I can.
Tanvir, we'd like to hear the final comment from Call sir, yeah, not before that.
So Call sir, sorry.
Call sir. Sir, unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Venkatgiri. It is a great pleasure and honor to have you in the ISA of Punjab.
Punjab is near to, I came many times there, Ludhiana, Amritsar, all meetings I had come. I have fond memories of coming to Punjab as secretary.
Honored to have you. You came last time also. You have added grace to ISA Punjab. And
I will come once again during my presidency. I will come once again.
Dr. Naresh, Dr. Tanvir will be guided by your wisdom, and they will do excellent. God bless ISA. Thank you, Tanvir. It was an excellent program. Excellent program. Thanks to you, Dr. Naresh, Dr. Bajwa, both the speakers, the chairpersons, and everyone whosoever attended this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for your words of wisdom. Thank you, Venkatgiri, sir. And thank you, all the GC members. It was an honor to have 3 GC members today over here, Dr. Ashok Deshpande, sir, Dr. Sunil Sethi, and Dr. Rajiv Gupta, sir. And thanks to the speakers, Dr. VANITA, Dr. AHUJA, and Dr. Manisha Katikar, and Dr. Mayank Gupta and Dr. Vivek Gupta, and above all, thanks to Dr. Bajwa sir, who has been guiding us, and these webinars have been possible because of his guidance. Thank you. And the next will be on the as scheduled. The next webinar on the research methodology will be on the first Friday of the next month. So do join us, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Bajwa. Well done.
So much. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you, Manisha ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good night. Thank you.